There's a moment when you look in the mirror and realize the person staring back isn't who you thought you'd be. Not failure, but a quiet sense that something fundamental is missing. A disconnection between who you are and who you could become. That moment is where self-transformation truly begins. Before transformation happens on the outside, it starts as a silent psychological revolution on the inside. We think of change as an event, a sudden breakthrough. But transformation is a process of dismantling and rebuilding the mind. It's about perceiving the world through a completely different lens. Carl Jung called it individuation. Abraham Maslow saw it as self-actualization. But the truth is simpler. Transformation begins when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the fear of change. Most people never reach that threshold. They repeat patterns, running emotional programs learned in childhood. These beliefs become psychological walls. I'm not good enough, people like me don't succeed. It's too late to start over. They sound harmless, but they become the invisible architecture of your life. Transformation begins when you start to question those walls. Not tear them down, just notice them. Awareness is the first act of rebellion against a conditioned mind. Once you see the pattern, you can no longer be fully controlled by it. Researchers studying neuroplasticity discovered something remarkable. Every time you challenge an old belief, your brain literally begins to rewire itself. New neural connections form. Old ones weaken. The brain isn't a fixed map. It's a living landscape that adapts to your experiences. Transformation is neurobiological reconstruction. You are physically reshaping your mind when you choose differently, think differently, and act differently. But here's the paradox. Most people want transformation without discomfort. They want the reward without the friction. Yet discomfort isn't a sign you're failing. It's a sign your brain is being forced out of predictable pathways. It's the old self losing control. Growth feels like chaos because your inner system tries to hold on to familiarity, even when that familiarity suffocates you. This is homeostasis, the mechanism that keeps your sense of self consistent. When you act in ways that don't align with who you believe you are, your mind experiences discomfort and tries to restore the old balance. Real transformation doesn't begin with new habits. It begins with a new self-concept. The identity must shift before behavior can sustain itself. If you see yourself as disorganized, you might clean once, but your brain finds its way back to chaos. But when you say, I'm someone who takes care of my space, the mind aligns with a new image. Transformation is an identity project disguised as self-improvement. Every meaningful change begins with redefining who you believe yourself to be. This is why therapy and introspection work. They make the unconscious visible. Once something hidden becomes seen, it loses much of its power. The process is rarely linear. Most people describe it as a cycle: progress, doubt, regression, clarity, renewal. It mirrors the hero's journey. Transformation includes a liminal phase, the space between who you were and who you're becoming. Uncertain, uncomfortable, yet absolutely necessary. Without it, there's no room for rebirth. Your brain's default mode network becomes more active during this phase. It's rewriting your personal story. Every new story you tell yourself, if repeated with emotion, embeds itself as your new truth. When people say you become what you believe, they're describing a measurable psychological process. Belief is a pattern of neural firing repeated enough to feel true. The only way to change it is through conscious repetition, emotional reinforcement, and new experiences that prove the old pattern no longer defines reality. But here's the catch. People try to transform through sheer willpower, forcing new behaviors while holding old identities. They say, I want to be confident, but secretly see themselves as insecure. The subconscious doesn't buy the performance. It knows the old script too well. That's why transformation requires truth before effort. You can't become someone new while lying to yourself. Radical honesty is the foundation. Not the kind that shames, but the kind that gently exposes the real state of your inner world. That honesty breaks the defenses that keep you trapped. When you reach that level of honesty, something shifts. You stop trying to change from self-rejection and start evolving from self-understanding. Most advice fails because it assumes you need fixing. But transformation isn't about fixing, it's about integration. Accepting the disowned parts and learning to work with them instead of against them. Take procrastination. On the surface, you need more discipline. But beneath that, procrastination hides fear. Fear of failure, success, or judgment. When that fear is acknowledged with compassion, the behavior dissolves because the mind no longer needs to protect itself through avoidance. Transformation is not self-attack. It's self-reconciliation. Emotional awareness is crucial. You can't transform what you refuse to feel. Emotions are signals about what's misaligned or unhealed. When you interpret them instead of suppressing them, you move through them instead of being trapped. Mindfulness and self-compassion reduce the brain's threat response. When you approach discomfort with curiosity rather than judgment, the amygdala calms down. This opens the prefrontal cortex. Kindness toward yourself literally expands your capacity to change. The most profound transformations happen quietly, not in grand declarations, but in subtle moments when you catch yourself choosing differently. You pause before reacting, you breathe before speaking. You say no when you used to say yes out of fear. Each moment is a micro-revolution that rewires the self. We rarely notice transformation as it happens. It's only when you look back that you realize how far you've come. The conversations you no longer tolerate, the thoughts that no longer dominate you, the pain that no longer defines you. These are all markers of change. The person you are now would be unrecognizable to your past self. That's the quiet miracle. It's not a single awakening, but the gradual realization that you've outgrown an old version. And yet there's always more to uncover. Transformation doesn't end, it evolves. Every time you expand into a new identity, life presents another threshold. What people misunderstand is that transformation isn't about self-discipline or motivation. It's about awareness so honest it dissolves illusion. When you see clearly the real mechanics of your mind, the fears, the narratives, you gain freedom. Not the kind that makes everything easy, but the kind that lets you choose consciously. There's cognitive dissonance, the discomfort when actions and beliefs don't align. Most people resolve it by changing actions back to old beliefs. Those who transform do the opposite. They let discomfort stay long enough to force beliefs to evolve. That's where the real work happens. That's where transformation hardens into identity. Self-transformation is a constant negotiation between who you were and who you're becoming. Each day presents a subtle invitation to respond differently. Sometimes you fail. Sometimes you fall back into old habits, but even then, you're not starting from zero. Because awareness doesn't unlearn itself. Once you've seen truth, it lingers. One overlooked aspect is environment. Our surroundings, the people we talk to, the content we consume, all reinforce who we believe we are. Your environment mirrors your identity. If you're trying to become more creative but spend time around cynicism, your brain receives conflicting signals. That's why environmental design matters. If you want to transform, build a world that supports who you're becoming. Remove triggers of your past self. Add cues for the new one. But the deeper layer isn't about the outer world. It's about what you allow yourself to believe internally. Beliefs aren't just thoughts. They're instructions your brain gives your body. When you believe you can't change, your nervous system prepares for failure. When you believe you're capable, your physiology shifts. Your heart rate, posture, focus all align with that inner certainty. Visualization and affirmation, when done with emotional conviction, have measurable effects. Imagining yourself performing an action activates nearly the same brain regions as physically doing it. The more vividly you rehearse a new identity, the more your brain recognizes it as familiar. You become what you practice being, but transformation isn't about pretending. It's about embodying. Pretending says, I'm something I'm not. Embodying says, I'm learning to live as what I already am beneath the noise. The psyche doesn't crave to become someone new. It craves to return to wholeness. That's the paradox. It feels like becoming someone different, but it's remembering who you really are when fear and conditioning no longer dictate your choices. Many describe this through the false self, the persona constructed to survive. As children, we adapt. We learn what earns love, what avoids rejection. We create a mask that fits our surroundings. But eventually, that mask becomes suffocating. The journey begins when you stop identifying with it. You start asking, who am I beneath what I was taught to be? That question alone can dismantle decades of conditioning. This is ego death, the gradual loosening of identification with the constructed self. You stop defending your opinions so fiercely. You stop needing to be right. You stop trying to prove your worth. You observe your thoughts instead of becoming them. From that perspective, transformation feels less like effort and more like unfolding. The more you release, the more space you create for something authentic to emerge. But authenticity isn't fixed. It's fluid, adaptive. Who you are today isn't who you were 5 years ago. That's not a contradiction. It's evolution. Identity itself is dynamic. Every belief, experience, breakthrough rewrites your internal story. Rather than chasing a final version, live in alignment with your current truth. Still, transformation requires courage. Not the cinematic kind, but the quiet, consistent kind that shows up even when no one's watching. Because changing yourself means disappointing some versions of your past, and sometimes disappointing people who still identify with those versions. You'll face misunderstanding. You'll lose certain connections. That's normal. Growth often looks like loss before it looks like liberation. But what you lose in comfort, you gain in clarity. There's also emotional conservation. Suppressed emotions don't disappear. They transform into patterns, projections, physical tension. When you finally transform, all those stored emotions rise to the surface. That's why it feels turbulent. You're not breaking. Your mind is releasing what it's been holding. The tears, confusion, fatigue, these are signs that old emotional backlog is being processed. Every release creates space for renewal. And with each release, your relationship with time changes. The future no longer feels distant. It begins to feel like something unfolding naturally from present choices. That's a major shift, from striving to allowing. Once you stop trying to become someone, you start being someone. You act in alignment rather than from desperation. Ironically, change happens faster then. Transformation isn't always visible to others. Sometimes it looks like stillness, silence, even withdrawal. You may spend months reflecting. To the outside world, it might look like you're stuck. But internally, your neural pathways are reorganizing. Your beliefs are being rewritten. Growth doesn't always announce itself with noise. Sometimes the deepest revolutions happen quietly in the background. When the new self finally stabilizes, it feels familiar in a strange way. You don't feel like you've become someone new. You feel like you've come home. The constant inner conflict softens. The things that used to trigger you lose their power. You respond with calm instead of defensiveness. You speak honestly without rehearsing. You move through the world with groundedness. That's psychological maturity. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of perspective. This corresponds to increased coherence between emotional and rational brain centers. It's the integration of emotion and reason, instinct and awareness. Your reactions become choices. Your impulses become insights. You stop being driven by unconscious patterns and start living with conscious intent. But even here, transformation continues. The self is not a destination, it's a process of continuous adaptation. You'll keep evolving as new challenges arise, as new layers of awareness open. Transformation isn't a ladder, it's a spiral. You revisit the same lessons at higher levels of consciousness. The difference is you meet them with more wisdom, more patience, less fear each time. Viktor Frankl said, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." That's the essence. External control is limited, but internal evolution is infinite. You may not control what happens to you, but you can always control what it means to you. That shift in meaning gives pain its purpose. So if you find yourself at a threshold, uncertain, afraid, unsure who you're becoming, know it's part of the process. Confusion is not failure. It's the space between identities. It means the old structure is dissolving and something new is taking shape. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to stay awake through the transition. Awareness is the bridge between what was and what will be. Eventually, transformation is no longer something you do. It becomes the way you live. You stop needing drastic change because your life itself becomes continuous renewal. You outgrow without forcing. You learn without trying. You heal without rushing. And in those quiet moments, you begin to understand that transformation was never about becoming extraordinary. It was about realizing that being ordinary but conscious is extraordinary enough. The psychology of self-transformation isn't about chasing perfection. It's about cultivating awareness, compassion, and truth. It's about aligning your internal world so deeply that your external world begins to reflect it naturally. It's about learning to walk through the unknown without needing guarantees. Because life is a series of transformations. From innocence to experience, from fear to understanding, from self-protection to self-expression. Every ending you've survived wasn't really an ending. It was an initiation. Every heartbreak, failure, moment of despair was life shaping you into someone capable of greater depth. The person you're becoming is not the result of luck or motivation. It's the result of every choice you've made to face yourself honestly when it would have been easier to hide. That's what transformation truly is. Not a single breakthrough, but a lifelong conversation between the person you've been and the person you're still becoming. It's not glamorous, it's not easy, but it's real. And in the end, that's all that matters. To live a life that is true, aware, and awake enough to say, I didn't just exist, I evolved. If this resonated with you, consider what small shift you could make today. Not a dramatic change. Just one conscious choice that aligns with who you're becoming. Remember, transformation doesn't ask for perfection. It only asks for participation, and you're already here. You're already becoming. Thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing growth. Subscribe if this journey speaks to you, and I'll see you in the next transformation.